Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. Really excited to be taking another virtual field trip out to the Vancouver Aquarium with OceanWise. We're going to join Rachel Bell Irving, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about reptiles and amphibians. So some of you out there might be wondering, what's the difference between a reptile and an amphibian? Because in some cases, some of them might look kind of similar if you just do a quick glance at them. We're going to learn a little bit more today about some of their adaptations and what it is that makes them unique. So Rachel, it is so awesome to have you joining us live today. We've got some great classrooms joining us, and we're excited for the event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. So yes, hi, everybody. My name is Rachel. I'm currently at the Vancouver Aquarium in Stanley Park in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We're located on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations peoples. So here at the aquarium, we are right in the heart of a rainforest, a temperate rainforest. But for today's program, I brought you to a little bit of a different rainforest. This is an underwater jungle that you have behind me. It's a really fantastic home for a lot of different species, specifically reptiles, and of course, a couple amphibians too. So we're going to talk today mostly about reptiles because I do actually have a special guest that will be coming by a little bit later in the program. But for now, we'll also talk about some of those adaptations and why they are important. Just for context sake, OceanWise is a conservation organization. We are internationally based. Currently, our home office is in Vancouver, but we have initiatives around Canada and around the world, and we're really eager to help everybody connect with the ocean and to learn more about it. Because the more you learn, the more you understand, and you have knowledge as a tool, the more you're able to then go out and make choices, make decisions, and make change, of course, in our own communities. So talking about really cool animals is a great way to start learning about that too. So what we're going to start with is a little bit of observations as scientists would do when they're out in the field, just trying to see what makes a reptile. We use characteristics, so features of their bodies, to try and understand how we can group these animals together and see what the connections are, and then see how each of them are affected based on different changes in the environment. So when we're grouping things together, we're looking for characteristics that they share. So we're going to look at some of the characteristics that reptiles share together and how amphibians are related to that as well. So I'm going to show you a picture. We're going to make some observations. And Joe, if you wouldn't mind helping me after we've given the students a couple seconds to look, let's go to each class and see if they can point out some of the things that they see. All right. Sounds like a plan. Awesome. So you're going to see Joe's face for just a wonderful second there. And then I'm going to bring up my photo of this creature. I'm not going to say what it is because it's probably not what you think it is. But let's just take a couple minutes or a couple seconds here, make some observations. So we're looking at like texture, body shape, different features. And I'm going to ask Joe if you could call in some of the classrooms. Let's see what people are seeing with this animal.
All right, let's do it. Let's start with Mrs. Harrison's class. What kind of features do you think make that animal a reptile? What do you guys think? What's a feature?
Scales.
Scales. Nice. That's awesome. We do. It's covered in rough skin, the scaly, wonderful skin. That's awesome.
All right, let's put Mrs. Thompson's class on the spot. Do you see any features?
We're going to pass on this one, I think. It's the, oh, wait, Connor, quickly. Did you hear that?
I didn't. What did Connor say?
Cold-blooded vertebrae.
Woo! Getting right into the details. I'm going to come back to that, Connor. Thank you.
All right, let's put Mrs. Alsterbrook's class on the spot.
I guess, like, I can tell it has a tail, or a bird, reptile tail.
Okay, I heard reptile tail.
That tail is pretty cool feature, especially with this animal. Nice, big, powerful tail. And did we have one more class?
Yeah, let's check Mrs. Sweezy's class, see if they have a thought.
What do you guys say?
It lays eggs.
Ooh, nicely done. So you're using some of your previous knowledge and throwing that in there too. We know that they lay eggs. That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in some observations. So even just by looking at the animal without knowing anything, we can see that it's got some of those reptilian features. It's got scaly skin. That's really one of the easiest things to look for when you're trying to identify a reptile, is looking for rough skin. When we think about amphibians being things like frogs and newts and salamanders, their skin is very moist. Water can pass through it. It's very soft. Completely different from reptiles with their wonderful rough skin. I mean, like that we said, it's got a really powerful tail. This specific animal is a caiman. So it's actually related to crocodiles and alligators. It's the third animal in that grouping. And of course, it's a reptile. And you also mentioned how it's cold-blooded and how it is a vertebrate. So if everybody touches their neck, and you'll feel that there's some wonderful bones back there, feeling those really heavy, dense bones, that's what makes humans a vertebrate as well. We've got nice bony structure underneath our skin, and reptiles are the same way. They have to have a bony structure to keep them supported. And the other big thing with reptiles is that they are air breathers. So this caiman is on land. It has a set of lungs just like we do. If you take a really deep breath in, that shows that you are an air breather as well. So already, even though we look very, very different, humans have a lot of similarities to reptiles as well. We've got lung breathers, we've got vertebrae, and of course we've got, with reptiles, they are scaly skin. And we'll talk about cold-blooded as well, because reptiles can come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This is Piku, who you're seeing on the screen there. Piku is a pig-nosed turtle, personally one of my favorite turtles that we have here at the Vancouver Aquarium. Very cute, got a little snorkel for a nose, which is how they get their name, the pig-nosed turtle. And they are still a reptile, even though it looks completely different from our caiman before, still a reptile. And how do we know that? Piku has to come up to get air to breathe. Piku is a vertebrate. He has a spine underneath that shell. And of course, we've got the shell and this rough, kind of scaly skin. So already we can see, just by looking totally different, these animals are still reptiles because they have something in common, which is really, really cool. And so those are kind of the key characteristics that we have looking at reptiles. And we actually might have a reptile friend with us today, which is super excited. So first, I'd like to introduce you to our resident reptile expert. This is Andrea.
Hi, everybody.
Everyone say hi. Yay, lots of waves. Awesome. So Andrea, we've got schools, 4 schools at the moment, a couple live on YouTube that are joining us from across the country, across North America.
Cool.
And we just mentioned how reptiles are air breathers, how they have vertebrates like we do, how they're cold-blooded. We haven't gotten too much into that detail. Okay. And they are found all over the world, which is really exciting. So could you please tell us who you've brought with you today?
So I brought my friend here. He's called a Brazilian rainbow boa. So I'm going to get him out so I can talk a little bit more about him.
Your big debut. Wow.
So like I said, this is called a Brazilian rainbow boa. We also have Colombian rainbow boas. And they're this really cool, like kind of yellowy, orangey color. And so he's a boa. So boas are actually kind of like a live-bearing snake. So they don't lay eggs like some pythons do, which is kind of cool. And you'll find them in Brazil, which is in South America, so a little bit farther away than us.
That's awesome. And now why do you have a glove for him?
So he's just getting used to being handled by people. So I just have the glove just for his comfort and just to save me in case he decides he doesn't really want to be handled anymore. But he's doing pretty good here, and he's staring at all of you guys.
Yeah, you can definitely go a little closer if you like.
Get him a little bit closer to you.
Got some couple waves. That is awesome. So, Andrew, we mentioned that these snakes are cold-blooded. So humans are able to regulate our own body temperature. When we get too hot, we sweat. When we get too cold, we shiver. Snakes don't have the ability to do that. So what do they do to make sure they stay a healthy temperature?
So snakes rely on their environment. So he's taking heat from my arms right now and from the lights that are shining on us. We'll often see snakes basking on rocks, or sometimes we'll see them on the road, because those are places that are really hot that the sun has hit. So But when they get a little bit too hot, they like to hide under caves and under rocks, and they like to burrow in soil to cool them off. So that's why we sweat. It helps us. It helps us cool down, and that's why we put blankets on. It helps us warm up a little bit. But our bodies can make our own heat and cool us down easy. Where snakes can't really do that. They have to find places to do it for them.
Awesome. What is your favorite part about snakes?
I think all the things are really my favorite part about snakes. I mean, they're so much different than us, but they're a lot similar to us in many ways. But I think my most favorite thing is you might see his tongue sticking out there, and that's how snakes smell. So they have this really cool organ on the top of their mouth called their Jacobson's organ, and that helps them to basically smell the air with their tongue. It's pretty cool.
That is really cool. All right, so I'll do one more question for Andrea, and then I'm going to open the floor for boys and girls if you'd like to ask questions. This month we're talking a lot about climate change and how temperatures are starting to vary in the wild and things like that. And seeing as these guys need their environment for their temperature, do you think there's going to be an impact with climate change, or are we seeing any of that already?
Definitely. I mean, snakes do like when it's warmer out, but it might mean that they get displaced in their environments and move farther away from their home ranges just because maybe it's getting too hot for them or it's too cold because some places are getting colder. But it definitely does affect them just for all the reasons that we've just said.
Yeah, and they're important because they're food for some animals, they're predators for other animals, so they have that really important part in the food chain as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've got our, it's a rainbow boa, sorry?
It's a rainbow boa.
Rainbow boa, awesome. So we've got our wonderful rainbow boa and Andrea here. Joe, if we'd like to open it up to the floor for some questions, I think that would be a good place to start.
All right, I think we can make that happen. So let's see, I want to give a shout out. We have, oops, it's the wrong page. There it is. We have Mrs. Morin's group hanging out with us now. Grade 3s joining us in Nova Scotia. Let me turn on their microphone and see how they're doing. Oops, never mind. They just dropped out. Okay, we will try that again. We'll try Mrs. Harrison's class. She's got some 1-2s hanging out with her in Ear Falls. Let me turn their microphone on. How we doing, boys and girls?
Good, thanks. We are wondering what the boa would eat.
Oh, good. Very good question. So boas, just like a lot of other snakes, like to eat things like rodents, so mice and rats. So here at the aquarium, they'll eat things like mice and rats. They're about the same size as the biggest part of their bodies. It's a pretty good size meal.
Awesome.
All right, and then I know that boas catch their prey in a little bit of a different way than some other types of snakes. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So boas are also called boa constrictors. And so when they want to eat their prey, they strike at them really quickly, and then they bring it all in, and then they give it a big, huge hug. Probably not the kind of hug that you really want, but that helps them catch their prey.
Cool. So are they venomous like some other snakes?
No, so there's only about 20% of all snake species that are actually any kind of venomous. So this type of boa is not. Very neat.
Okay, very cool. Let's see. Mrs. Thompson's class. Let's take a visit over there. Mrs. Thompson's class is joining us from Peterborough, Ontario. Some grade 4 or 5 students. Let's get their microphone turned on. How we doing, boys and girls?
Great. Good. What's your favorite adaptation for a reptile?
Ooh, that's a good one.
There we go.
Not to discriminate against my friend Snake here, but tortoises do this really cool thing, and lots of turtles, where they rely on UV to help them stay healthy. So they're able to absorb UV rays into their shell that helps them grow a nice healthy shell, which I think is pretty cool. I can't do that.
That's cool. I think my favorite part is just the variety of colors and shapes that you see with them, especially just snakes alone have so many different camouflaging patterns, and the muscles are incredible.
Yeah.
All right, great question. Mrs. Also Brooks, grade 3s are joining us in San Antonio, Texas. Definitely some snakes down in that area. Let's get their microphone turned on. How we doing, San Antonio?
I was wondering, what is your favorite snake?
Ooh, can you pick a favorite?
I don't know if I can pick a favorite snake. I mean, I like all of the snakes equally. We do have one snake here that lives behind the scenes. Her name is Pisco. She is a very much bigger version of this guy. She's a 9-foot boa constrictor, but she is a very beautiful, beautiful lady. So I'd have to say she's probably my favorite snake here. But I like all snakes pretty much equally.
What about you, Rachel? Do you have a favorite snake?
I really love the emerald tree boa just because of the color, and you really get to see, is it infrared that they can detect or something?
Yeah, they
like
can
that?
see heat.
They can see heat, which is just really cool in general. So I'd probably say them.
All right. Well, I thought because you have a snake, I thought maybe I should have one too.
Look at that!
Well, I've got a corn snake here. And when I was still teaching in the classroom, this corn snake, she lived in my classroom, so she was always hanging out with my students.
Very cool.
That is so awesome.
So I thought we should have a snake party. So we've got
We got a little snake party.
got a couple of different snakes hanging around. All right. Well, let's jump over to another classroom. Mrs. Sweezy's class. They are joining us in Barrie, Ontario. Looks like some grade 2s hanging out with us. Let's get your microphone on. How are we doing, grade 2s?
I'm a grade
We're grade
3.
3s.
Oh, sneaky grade 3s. All right. Even better.
My question is, how many kinds of snakes do you have at the aquarium?
Oh, geez. I'm counting. I think we have about 9 or 10 species of snake at the moment. We don't have a whole lot of different snakes here just because we are a very large aquarium and we have, 67,000 different kinds of animals here. So we don't have that many species of snake, but I think 10 is a pretty good number.
And then in terms of reptiles, we also have a couple tortoises and the green sea turtle, Piku, the pig-nosed turtle that you saw before. So some tiny but mighty group of reptiles.
Yes.
Do you know what the smallest reptile we have is?
I think the skinniest is probably the Barron's green racer.
Yeah,
he's pretty little.
Oh.
All right. Awesome. And then on the subject of reptiles, what about amphibians? Any amphibians kicking around the aquarium?
Yeah, we do have a lot of amphibians. The cool part about the amphibians is we're part of a restoration program as well with a bunch of other zoos and aquariums. So amphibians are very endangered in many different areas. In BC, we've got the Oregon spotted frog and the northern leopard frog that are both critically endangered in BC. So we have a lot of conservation efforts going on in the aquarium to try and breed the frogs and have lots of tadpoles that then we can release back into the wild. And part of that is their sensitive skin because the water can move in between the skin. They breathe through their skin. If anything gets in the way of that, like water pollution, then amphibians or habitat damage as well, amphibians can be very targeted in that sense. So we've got a few amphibians here that we're trying to help conserve back in the wild as well.
All right, very cool. As a scuba diver, I think that's a really cool adaptation, be able to breathe through your skin when you're underwater. That would be pretty cool to be able to do that.
That would make diving so much easier.
It would be so much easier.
All right, let's swing back to Mrs. Harrison's class. If you have a follow-up question, we're ready.
We watched a video not long ago about chameleons and giving a live birth rather than laying an egg. Why did they not lay an egg? And are there other reptiles that do this?
That's a really great question. So like I said before, boas usually also give live birth. It's not quite the same as a human. So with boas and some other snakes that are ovoviviparous, they are kind of like a moving incubator. So they carry around their eggs inside of them, but the babies aren't actually attached to them. Whereas pythons and things like tortoises or turtles, they will lay eggs. So it really just depends on where they kind of are in the grand scheme of reptile relationships.
All right, great question. Mrs. Thompson's class, your microphone is on again if you have another question.
Yeah, Paige is coming right up quickly, Paige.
Do they have ears?
Reptiles and amphibians have ears.
That's a very good question. So snakes like this guy right here, they don't have external ears like we do, and same with tortoises, but they still have the same things on the inside of their skulls that we do. So if you feel along the side of your jaw, you'll feel where your jaw connects there, and they have that same kind of connection. It's called your quadrate bone back there. And so when a snake is like on me like this, or they're on the ground, or they're on a tree, they can feel vibrations through the ground or whatever medium that they're on, and that's how they hear. So if you put your head to the ground, you would feel kind of muffled sounds. That's what they would hear. So they don't really hear what I'm saying, like he can't hear that, but he could hear the vibration in the ground.
That is so cool.
All right. Back to Texas, Mrs. Also Brooks. Do you guys have another question?
I was just wondering, what kind of animals have you worked with?
Ooh. Tell us about your career, Andrea. How did you get here?
Well, I have a really cool job in the sense that I get to work with all of the Amazon animals. So everything in the Amazon could be, we have sloths, monkeys, parrots, snakes and turtles, frogs, lizards, spiders, cockroaches, pretty much everything you could possibly imagine. Even fish sometimes I've worked with. So pretty much everything that lives or breathes, I've looked after.
And did you do a degree for that, or did you kind of hands-on experience?
Yeah, I did my biology degree in science, and but it was lots of hands-on experience, work experience in different places, and then I've been here for about 12 years now. So if you want to work with animals, definitely get some hands-on experience.
All right, Mrs. Sweezy's class, we're heading back your way for another question. Our third graders.
Oh no, he's good.
How dangerous is a spitting cobra?
Spitting cobra. Well, I've never worked personally, but I know that usually cobras have very, very dangerous venom, and you probably don't really want to get bit by that guy. But thankfully, for a lot of places in North America, we have access to anti-venom, and so that protects us in case we do get bit by a venomous snake.
When was the last time you were bit?
By any snake?
Yeah.
It's probably a good year ago.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty
I've
good.
only been bit like 4 times, so I think I'm doing pretty good.
That's a pretty good record.
It's pretty good.
All right, on the subject of venom, I think this is kind of neat to ask. You hear about people who milk snakes. What does that mean, and why are they doing it?
I have a very basic knowledge on that topic, just because we don't really have venomous snakes here in the aquarium, and we only have one really venomous snake in British Columbia. But I do know people do that. Some people think that venom have like special powers. It makes them heal certain medical things. Some people use it as more of like a drug, I guess, to make them feel happy, I suppose. I guess there's a lot of reasons why people do that, but it's not very nice for the snake, unfortunately.
Yeah, all right, very cool. And then the other reason that I heard too, that they extract the venom is they can use that in some cases to make anti-venom.
That is exactly right. Yeah. So I mean, in those cases, that is obviously a good thing because it helps protect the snake and it helps protect the people. So yeah, you're very right.
And there's different strategies too. Like there's some times where they'll antagonize the snake to get it to bite, which is obviously not very nice for the snake. And there's other times that they have a more like gentle way of coaxing the snake to open its fangs and kind of milking it that way too. Yeah. So it depends on how you handle the animal. That's a really important thing. Yeah. Always being respectful to if you do meet an animal in the wild or if you do get to work with animals, it's just always showing respect when you're out dealing with them. All
right. So let's see. Is there any other questions in the classrooms? Give me a big wave if I should come back to your classroom. If you have a burning question. All right, Mrs. Thompson, I see lots of waving.
Do you capture the snakes, then train them, or no?
How do we get the snakes?
How do we get them here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the aquarium is part of a bigger network of zoos and aquariums called the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So we're a big group of places all across North America, and we work together to have snakes like this in our zoos and aquariums and move them around. So we don't really take things from the wild anymore in terms of snakes or turtles, really. We try and breed them all here so that, you know, we can either keep them here or we can move them to other places. It's kind of like a Noah's Ark kind of thing. Because if anything ever happened to them in the wild, then we would have some safe and sound here so that we could hopefully one day bring them back. That make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's an awesome point to bring out, is a lot of people might think of zoos as just places to go and see animals, but they don't know sometimes there's a lot of really important conservation work that goes on behind the scenes, protecting endangered species and breeding and making sure we do have healthy populations in the future, especially with all the changes like climate change.
The Vancouver Aquarium, if anyone ever gets a chance to come see us, is very much like an iceberg. So when you're visiting the galleries, you see about 40%, but there's actually about 2 floors below us. There's another floor above us, and there's lots of things going on, conservation and research behind the scenes too, and we're always happy to talk about those stories.
All right, Mrs. Harrison's class. I see someone nice front and center at the camera.
Do reptiles eat other reptiles?
Oh, good question.
Very good. Sometimes snakes will eat other lizards. Some bigger lizards will eat smaller lizards. Those are really the only kind of reptiles that will eat each other. Usually it's a bigger one eating a smaller one.
That's part of, I know the king cobra eats rat snakes and rat snakes eat rats, so the king cobra following the rat snakes, they tend to come into human contact for that reason, because they're trying to find food. And now that there's more human cities, there's more rats, there's more rat snakes, there's more king cobras kind of venturing into those villages. So it's not that they're necessarily dangerous, it's that we're starting to compete for space, which can be a challenge.
All right. Mrs. Alsobrooks, do you guys have a final question?
Why do snakes have their special patterns?
Oh, cool.
Good question.
Yeah, answer that one. Yeah, so animals will always look the way they do based on where they live. So for example, an animal that lives in a dark place is probably going to be really dark because it's a better camouflage. So when you see really funky patterns like what we have on our special boa, it's usually to be some kind of camouflage, so some way to blend in with the environment. Are these ones trees or are they on the ground mostly?
They're kind of a mix of both.
So they're probably living in a place that has lots of light and lots of shadows, lots of different brown shades. So those spots and those kind of black stripes are going to help them camouflage with the rocks, with the tree bark, with the shadows, all that kind of stuff.
All right, and one more trip to our grade 3s with Mrs. Sweezy. Let's see if they have a final question for us.
How often do snakes shed their silk?
Nice.
Very good question. It always depends on how old the snake is, how big the snake is, and what kind of snake it is. So usually a good average is about every 1 to 2 months. Some baby snakes will shed a little bit more often just because they're growing. But usually when they get to about this guy's size as an adult, they'll shed like every 1 to 2 months. Very good question.
That's so cool.
All right.
Before we do go, Andrea, I really want to share something that you did recently that I think a lot of people could take on as well, because everybody has a part to play when it's learning about the environment, when it's helping the environment. And they can be really simple things as sharing the stories you heard today, or it can be even maybe a fundraiser or things like that. And Andrea did something to help tortoises recently, actually at the Vancouver Aquarium. Would you mind telling us a bit about that?
Yeah, so about this time last year in Madagascar, which is off the coast of Africa, there's a species of tortoise there called the radiated tortoise. And unfortunately, some really bad guys decided that they wanted to take a lot of them from the wild. And so they actually confiscated about 10,000 radiated tortoises from some guy's house. And so the Turtle Survival Alliance put out a call to action from all zoos and aquariums to help them to fundraise to help save the tortoises. So I put on my thinking cap, and I'm really good at baking, and I know a lot of other people are also good at baking. So we had a big bake sale here at the aquarium, and we raised almost $2,000 for the Radiated Tortoise Project. So it's really that simple. just baking something or selling food that you make to people, it really can go a long way to help all the animals out there.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea.
No
That's
worries.
very cool. And you may not be a good baker, but you could be good at eating baked things. So then you could contribute that way by buying some of them. So
That's awesome.
Lots of ways to contribute. That's awesome. Great story. Not great to hear about so many tortoises, but good to hear that people are doing things to help protect them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you for that awesome info about reptiles. It's always great to hang out at the aquarium. Great to visit and meet our boa friend. Really cool. And yeah, of course, we look forward to our next visit to the Vancouver Aquarium.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, boys and girls, for joining us. If you want to learn more, education.ocean.org is where you can go to learn more. And feel free to contact us and ask any questions if you have that as well. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey,
that was like the coolest thing of my week as well.
Meet everybody.
All right. Let me turn the microphones on. You want to get nice loud, boys and girls? All right. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. Thanks again. Everybody have a good day. We'll see you later.